be showing off the number of butterfly and moth caterpillar species fed by that plant's leaves and which plants are long blooming. We are very lucky to have a lot of long blooming California natives, and those are important in terms of attracting insects and pollinators to your garden and then keeping them there. So our edible plants. We've got native strawberries. We've got one that does well on clay, the Fragaria vesca, and one that does well on sand, the Fragaria chiloensis, the beach strawberry. The supermarket strawberry has got beach strawberry genes in it. So it's really fun. It's a wonderful ground cover. It can take a lot of shade and it looks absolutely gorgeous. Those leaves are dark green. It's got those popping white flowers. And it's like looking at a starry night, but it's just covering your ground, and it's just beautiful. We've got wild ginger. It's got that, the root has got that spicy, hot, gingery flavor. It's going to want some water, and it's going to want full shade, total shade, nothing but the shade. Don't even get sun anywhere near it. I grow it in a really dark seep area of my garden, and it's a charming plant and delicious, and can cook with it. The barberry is interesting. There are barberries all over California in different species. Bright yellow flowers, blooms December to February, so it's an important plant for hummingbirds and bees. Hummingbirds want to stay in our garden year round, and bees can, especially the bumblebees, can hatch early, especially the queen bumblebees. So having a snack there for them will will convince them to stay in your garden. This is the ground cover version of the barberry. We're going to get to the shrubby version, but the ground cover version is beautiful, and the berries are dark purple. They're very sour, but they've got a lot of pectin in them. So if you're a Sour Patch Kids kind of candy person, you're going to love that. Long blooming, evergreen. It's just a really easy plant. And Yerba plana, this is the delicious fog-loving herb that our chapter of California Native Plant Society was named after. Evergreen, low-growing, loves shade and fog. Those tiny little white flowers are beloved of bumblebees, and the leaf tastes like a combination of mint and oregano. It is delicious. I use it, I stew some pumpkin. It's an Afghani dish, and then a little yogurt on top of that. And then you can crumble, I crumble the yerba buena on top of that. It's delicious with it. The Afghanis use a more minty mint. I like this, and I like that organic, that oregano mint combination on mine. You can eat it raw or you can cook it, and it is delicious.
So yerba buena, is it drought tolerant because it loves fog?
All of these, so not the ginger, but the rest of them are drought tolerant once they're established, which means you need to water them weekly for the first couple of summers, or a year like this, every week when we're not getting rain, until it gets to its third winter, until it gets to its third rainy season. So whenever the rainy season starts in the third year, then you're fine. But it's not drought tolerant until it's got enough of a root system to keep it established. And I don't water it. I haven't watered it since the first couple of years I put it in, backed off, and it just does fine. And it's been through some pretty unpleasantly dry years, including this one, and it's great. But you do have to get all of these plants established through their first summers, 2 summers. We unusually have a couple of deciduous ground covers. So the violets, the yellow one and the purple one, they're both what's called summer deciduous. So the roots stay in there all year round, but once it's dry, the leaves shrivel up, the flowers go away, and you just don't have it until it starts to rain again, or unless you irrigate. It's one of those plants that is in the riparian area, but it's not all the way at the bottom of the creek. So it's got this way of living through our dry summers. It turns out to be a very important plant for 4 of our endangered butterflies, and the leaves are delicious. So it just doesn't get any better than that. You can interplant it with some strawberries, because the strawberries are going to be that they put out a clump, and then they put out those little strawberry, thin strawberry stems. And so it's nice interplanted with strawberry. They both like the shade, and you can get them both established. And then miner's lettuce, if you think you can't grow anything, you can grow miner's lettuce. You need to order the seeds and get them onto any kind of soil, and they'll grow. They love shade. They'll deal with sun, but they'll shrivel up more easily in sun. And they're just a lot of fun to eat. That's between the miner's lettuce and the violet leaves, those are our winter salads. And not bitter at all, but but enough flavor to be fun to eat. More ground covers, but for sun. So if you've got a sunny area, our sagebrush is not a classic sage. It's not a salvia. It is, it's usually a bush, about a 4 foot by 4 foot bush, but there are a couple of versions that are ground covers, and they're beautiful. They're gray, they're fragrant, they're soft. And it's called a medicinal plant. It was used to clean out wounds, but I've got a friend who cooks with it. And so the next time I start cooking with sage, I'm going to try that, because it's not quite as strong as sage, but it's in that family. Self-heal, there's a version of this that is a European plant. This particular version is our local native plant. The leaves are edible and the flowers are gorgeous. I didn't realize at the time I grew it in my neighbor's garden that the flowers are supposed to be edible, and they have since taken the plant out. So I don't know what the flowers taste like, but the leaves are tasty. California's got about 70 different sages. Most of the time, I encourage you to plant your local sage. But for sage, because sage flavors are very strong, one of the things you might consider doing is go to a native nursery, find the native sages that are right for your soil, because some of them are adapted to sandy soil, some of them for clay, a few of them for those rocky soils. Find the ones that are adapted for your soil, and then taste the leaf and make sure that you like it. They're beautiful. These are the ground cover sages. Most of the rest of the sages are a bit more shrubby, but these are wonderful ground covers. Then they're so much fun to have. Now, all three of these are going to want full sun, and they mean it, really full sun. So if you've got shade or part shade, you want to use the other ones. We've got a lot of shorter plants. I think they're called forbs, but anyway, shorter plants. Our onion is delicious, and there are some 70 different species of onion in California. One leaf onion is one of our local ones here in San Francisco, but there are onion species all over California. They're not invasive. They all taste different from each other, just like the young onion species that you're used to. So just like shallots and garlic and Vidalia onions taste different than a white or a yellow onion or a leek. Each one of these onions is oniony, but different. And the thing about the onion that I did not realize is that it is entirely edible. The flowers are edible, the seeds are edible, the leaves are edible, as well as the roots, or the bulbs. I just, other than the one bulb I tasted just to see what it tasted like, I just don't have it in me to eat a bulb, even if I know it's edible. So I have eaten the flowers and the seeds, and they're just delicious. The flowers have an oniony taste, so they're going to go well in salad, and the seeds have a little bit of an oniony flavor. So if you put them on something like avocado toast, they're really going to dress that up. And then they're just beautiful in the garden. They want full sun, very bee friendly. I just adore them.
The leaves are like a ground cover, this one?
The leaves they're a little bit more like a, what is that long green onion called that gets used in cooking? I don't know why I can't.
Spring onion or scallion?
Scallion, thank you. It's a lot more like a scallion. And I haven't eaten our onion. I haven't eaten the leaves on my onions either, because the leaves, when they shrivel up, put the energy in to build more bulbs for next year. I know I could, but I just haven't. I eat what I can eat without interfering with next year's production. I should start giving them away because they're just yummy and I have lots of them. But anyway, I have, intellectually I know I can eat them. I just haven't done it. So sunflowers are a famous North American plant, and sunflower seeds are a famous North American plant product, right up there with tomatoes and corn and pumpkins or squashes. They aren't quite, so we don't have tomatoes and corn and squash per se that are native to California. There's something in the squash family, but it's not supposed to be delicious. Our sunflowers, though, those are delicious. A lot of our sunflowers grow in those riparian areas. They actually take a stupid amount of water. But that particular sunflower, which isn't native to San Francisco, our native one needs water. This one's native to the East Bay, which is pretty close. And it's got edible seeds. And it's an annual, which means you may be able to try it in containers. California poppies, again, you're going to want to grow this yourself. California poppy is the state flower, so you can't just go collect from those in the wild. But the seeds are edible. If you've seen California poppies grow, once they're pollinated, they put out this beautiful curved spear. And if you wait for that spear to go from green to brown, then the poppy seeds are ready and you can play with them. They just explode when you touch them. So I tend to use an envelope and stick the spears inside and let it add its poppy seeds to it, and then go add those to a variety of places. But the poppy seeds from the California poppy taste just like store-bought poppy seeds, except you can grow your own. And in the meantime, you can make your bees really happy. It's a bee favorite. So I'm not a huge mint fan. Yerba Buena is about as minty as I get. Coyote mint is drought tolerant. It wants full sun. It is a very minty leaf. I do grow it, and I other than tasting it the once to see how it tasted, it was very minty. And I haven't tasted the flowers. It does have an edible flower, but I haven't tasted it myself just because I'm afraid of getting more mint flavor, and I'm not all that fond of it. But it's a very pretty plant. Bees like it. Low growing, not a ground cover, but short. We have a lot of edible berries in California. The whole currant family has got a currant or gooseberry family has got edible berries. So pink flowering currant, I'm showing you the picture of the berries, and I realized with this crowd, I should have showed you a picture of the plant. It has got these gorgeous pink chandelier-like flowers that are beautiful. It is deciduous, so it's not going to be quite as great a visual barrier. But those pink flowers grow, are flowering December through February. So it's another wonderful plant to have in your garden because it will feed your hummingbirds and your early arriving bees and keep them in your garden. It can also take quite a bit of shade, not full shade, but quite a bit. And it supports over 100 different butterflies and moths on its leaves. So do be happy when those get chewed on. Coast barberry, we talked about the flat ground cover version earlier. This is the shrubby version, shiny evergreen leaves. It's just lovely. It's a very narrow plant. So it's a great plant if you've got a very, one of those side yards in California that just isn't very wide and you need something evergreen so that you do not see your neighbors. They don't see you, you have a little bit more privacy. It's a wonderful plant. Plus you've got those wonderful edible berries. Oh, by the way, each one of the currant berries tastes different from the other. Pink flowering currant, it's definitely got a lot of sour to it, but some sour was sweet. I like to put it on top of a roasted parsnip puree. So, and you can make that with milk or almond milk or any kind of liquid to get that puree, and then to put those on top. And this way you get that great contrast between the berries and the sweetness and the earthiness of the parsnip. So salal is a great plant. I have killed it twice, which makes me peevish. It wants a lot of water. It is one of the most prevalent plants up in British Columbia, which explains why it expects a lot more water than it gets here. It is delicious. It's got a very winey, tasty berry, but I have planted it in my seep, in shady seeps twice, and it just didn't make it through the drought. So it's fine in heavy rain years, but, and I won't water it. If it won't live, I will let it die. So I've let it die twice, which makes me sad because it's delicious. So huckleberry is in the blueberry family. If blueberry were hosting Thanksgiving, huckleberry would show up and have a place at the table. It's one of its cousins. And all of the vaccinium family, all of the blueberry family, the berries each taste really different from each other. Cranberry is in the vaccinium family. Here on the West Coast, actually here, sort of San Francisco and south, we've got huckleberries, that Vaccinium ovatum. If you went all the way up to Oregon, Northern California, Northern California, and then Oregon and Washington, and then British Columbia, each time you keep going up along the coast, you get more and more Vaccinium species. I have not tasted the rest of them. I want to taste the rest of them because huckleberry is just delicious. It tastes as if a blueberry went on a 5-hour wine tasting trip and then you ate it. It's just yummy. It does want a lot of shade. There needs to be 2 of them, and it's going to want some water. It's going to want regular garden water. So irrigating at least once a week for the rest of its life. I have read that it becomes drought tolerant. I haven't killed it, which is a thing, but I do have it near my seeps, and I think you'd want to continue irrigating that. Salmonberry is just a pain to grow. It's in the raspberry family. You need to have 2. They need some shade, but some sun. I had 2 that just never bore fruit. And it's because they were getting too much shade. I've got 1 in my seep, 2 in my neighbor's seep. They have to bloom at the same time, so you can get the cross pollinations. They don't all bloom at the same time. So that was a year where, hey, some of them actually bloomed at the same time, so I got some fruit. It is tasty fruit. If you're out hiking, definitely try the fruit. It's got that dark, bright Barbie pink. There's a little darker Barbie pink and a lighter Barbie pink. It is darker Barbie pink. It is real pretty. And it can handle quite a bit of shade, although not full shade. It doesn't run as much as regular raspberry family members do, and it is the only thing I will recommend to you that's got thorns. On the other hand, did I mention what a pain it is to grow? So as tasty as it is, it's up to you. If you just love Barbie pink, which admittedly I do, it's fun, and you get edible fruit, and it's tasty. And the leaves support a lot of caterpillars, and the leaves from the entire raspberry family are the sort of thing you can put in tea to make for soothing when you've got a sore throat. So to help soothe that. So the leaves can be used medicinally. But we've also got thimbleberry, also in the raspberry family. It's shorter. It doesn't need as much water as salmonberry. Doesn't have any thorns. It will run. In other words, it will just keep moving into parts of your garden in a really cute kind of way. I grow it on clay, so it gets to about 4 feet. I've seen it in Golden Gate Park, which is on sand, and it gets to 6 or 7 feet. Can take a lot of shade, and I'd say you need 2, but just buy 1, put it in, and let it run. Eventually, when you have a couple, they'll start cross-pollinating. That red berry is delicious. It is ridiculously good. It's just past yummy. So if you want to know what that tastes like, show up at Golden Gate Park. Of course, I did not tell you to eat a fruit out of our park, but you really should try it. There are big hedges of it in the redwood forest area for Golden Gate Park. And those red berries are only ripe for a day, or you would have them in the supermarket. They're so delicious. They look sort of that weird beigey pink the day before, and they're all dried up the day afterwards. So go out into your garden at the end of June or Golden Gate Park to taste it, and just arm wrestle with the birds for those berries because it's delicious.
So the coast barberry, is that Oregon grape? I don't.
Yes, it's in the
Oh,
same family.
okay, okay.
Yeah, Oregon grape, I think is a little farther north than us. There are barberries, the Berberis family, or what used to be the Mahonia family, all over California. The Nevins barberry grows all the way down in Southern California. And again, they all have the same characteristics of bright yellow flowers, winter blooming, evergreen, shiny leaves, very pretty. So very easy to use. I mean, you could use it in your front yard too. I recommended it for the side yard just because it's so nice and narrow.
So Susan, even though the salmonberry is a lot smaller leaf, it needs more water than those leaves on the thimbleberry are really big.
I know. That's a really smart observation. So because I got so much thimbleberry when I planted it in my neighbor's garden, because really it runs a lot, I tried it in different places all over the garden. I tried it in, this is all clay, but the neighbor who's got this garden the size of a postage stamp like I do, has got shady damp clay, shady dry clay, damp sunny clay, and dry sunny clay. It grew everywhere, grew in all of them. It was happiest getting sun and water. So
that's where you usually find it when you're hiking the riparian along creeks.
Yeah. Oh, you know your stuff. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's a riparian plant that will survive though. It's kind of crazy. It was happy everywhere I planted it. In fact, I'm looking to find a place that isn't actually happy. But it's really good point on the larger leaves. The salmonberry just isn't happy outside of a seed. They're both riparian, but the salmonberry must be a little closer to those creek areas.
Mm-hmm.
And herby shrubs. So we talked about the sages, so many different sages for California. So the black sage isn't native to San Francisco, but it is native to all around us, East Bay, North Bay, and South Bay. Hummingbird sage is native all the way down to Los Angeles, although I've got a friend who's had trouble growing it in LA. The hummingbird sage is the only one of our native sages that can take some shade. Still drought tolerant. It's got enormous leaves, kind of odd looking. And those pink flowers, because the flowers are edible, the hummingbird sage, hot pink flowers, taste like fruit punch. They are delicious. So be sure to try those when you see them growing someplace. They are amazing. All of the rest of California sages want full sun, including the black sage, the Salvia mellifera. Not really sure why it's called black sage. It's got that sort of light gray flower, but all of the rest of the sage flowers, because you can eat all of them, taste really spicy and would be delicious in a say a pineapple and carrot Moroccan salad. Adding some of these spicy sage flowers to them would be wonderful. And they're just a lot of fun to grow. Get hummingbirds, bees, butterflies all over our sages. And then there's something called monkey flower savory. It is extremely minty. I did try both the leaf and the flower, and the flower is also extremely minty. So try that in some salad or something where you want an extremely minty flavor. The leaf is edible raw or cooked. It wants a lot of shade and it wants some water. My neighbor took it out before I could figure out just exactly how drought tolerant it is, but it was definitely happy with a lot more water than I would give most plants.
Is this related to the actual Diplocus monkey flower?
No, it is weirdly related to the miner's lettuce earlier.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So this is the problem with common names. And it's why I've got the Latin name as well as the common name. The common name's sort of like Artemisia is a sagebrush. It is not a sage.
Mm-hmm.
Monkey flower savory, not a monkey flower. There's a wonderful Southern California vine with beautiful, the flowers look a lot like that monkey flower savory, where it's got the tubular red flowers that bloom late August to October. It's a wonderful vine from Southern California that I did not unfortunately grow when I was in Southern California because hummingbirds adore it. And that thing is called heartleaf penstemon, not a penstemon. So
Oh, yeah.
it's just unfortunate. So you definitely want to check, especially when it's something edible. All of the salvias are edible, and I'm referring to them as salvias because I want to make sure if something's got sage in the name, you're not necessarily eating that. And we've got a bunch of birds love to eat grass seeds. A bunch of birds love to eat seeds, and a bunch of them love to eat grass seeds. But one of our grass seeds is edible, the blue wild rye. I have not grown it, and I have not tasted it. I only just found out it was edible. So it's on my list of things I want to taste. California grapevines. I spoke with someone once who was a landscaper, and she had just put in her retirement garden. And I looked at her and I said, so no grapevines? And she went, oh yeah, no grapevines. These things are crazy, crazy amounts of maintenance. Emphasis on the crazy amounts of maintenance. And like an idiot, I didn't realize how much maintenance they were, and I had 3. They want to be 40 feet. They want to be 40 feet every year. Rogers Red is, it was a sport found out in the wild. Later, they did DNA analysis and realized that it was a combination of a California wild grape and I think Zinfandel. It does have that really gorgeous color, but it is, if you want to cover a chain link fence, the way that chain link fence is covered, that's your plant. And that, by the way, is a native nursery over in the East Bay. It's really beautiful. My vines have yet to produce any grapes. They just keep putting on growth. But the leaves are very attractive to insects. And so it's like watching a bird feeder. There's constantly birds over there eating the insects off the leaves. I've watched boy bumblebees sleeping underneath the leaves so that birds won't find them and eat them. And we've got fruit trees. We've got the hollyleaf cherry, Prunus ilicifolia. We also have the Prunus virginiana demisia. I have not eaten either of them. The ilicifolia grows on sand. Grace Sang, who is on this webinar, has said that it is delicious, and I trust her. Hollyleaf cherry is a wonderful plant. It is more of a hedgy tree. You can trim it to look like a lollipop tree if you want to, but it will also give you that incredible evergreen hedge with big white flowers, very pretty. And then you've got those gorgeous red fruit and that are edible. And our cherries are important plants for our caterpillars. They support over 200 different kinds. Blue elderberry is another bird feeder. Don't put out a regular bird feeder, put out a blue elderberry. It's much less maintenance than a grapevine and just as attractive. It's got a lot of insects coming to it. And so the birds are there to eat the insects. It's got shallow little flowers so that the birds can, so that insects don't drown in a pool of nectar. And then the birds show up and eat all the insects, and then they stay for the berries, which are also delicious. Ozoberry tree, I have not tried. It only grows on sand and it needs some shade. Actually, blue elderberry can take quite a bit of shade as well. Needs some sun, but it can take quite a bit of shade. My blue elderberry only gets a couple of months of sun, but it looks like it's enough to keep it in good shape.
Is that a tree form? The blue elderberry is a tree form, right? It's not like a shrub.
So it is a shrub.
Okay.
It's a shrub that you can trim to be like a tree.
Okay.
It gets to 30 feet.
Yeah, it gets pretty tall. I've seen it in San Francisco. It's like 20 feet tall.
Yeah, mine is 20 feet. It's 12 years old. So as opposed to my huckleberry, which is 4 feet and 12 years old, it's supposed to get taller, but it is a really slow growing plant. Interestingly, a lot of these plants will not put on a flower. They'll put on a flower or two just to show you that they're not dead and they're working on the root system. But most of the perennial California natives will wait until the 3rd or 4th year when they really have a good sized root system that's able to hold a lot of water. before they start putting out significant flowers and fruit production. So don't think you've got anything wrong. The thing about the huckleberry is that I got multiple flowers first year and then started getting decent fruit production as well. Even the blue elderberry took a while. So good things to know about them. They're fine. They're just working on their root system so they can make it through the summer. And we have nut trees. So all of our pine nuts are edible in California, all of the different pine trees that we've got, but we don't have pines that are native to San Francisco, regardless of the fact that we have a ton of Monterey pines here. So the pine nuts are edible, but not the cypress and not the junipers, just the pines. Just be sure you can tell the difference. We've got a couple of different kinds of hazelnuts in California. The California hazelnut is the one that grows down here in San Francisco, and it's a beautiful tree. I was whining about the maintenance for the grape. I have yet to do any maintenance to my, well, I now have 4 hazelnuts, but 2 hazelnuts that are biggish in my neighbor's garden. That top left picture is one of their hazelnuts. They're beautiful. They've got that gorgeous vase shape, and then they've got those beautiful yellow leaves in the fall, and then they produce nuts. You need 2 hazelnuts. You need to get them from different growers because they need to be slightly different genetically, but they're really pretty plants. And I'm really grateful the new neighbors kept them. I went ahead and put 2 in my garden anyway because I adore them. We do not have the Northern California walnut that is native to San Francisco, but it is native to South Bay, North Bay, and East Bay. So I wanted to make sure to include it in this conversation. It's really hard to find a genetically pure Northern California walnut. Just buy whatever you can find at a native nursery. It will be mostly native Northern California walnut genetics. But because the walnut is wind pollinated and also the hazelnut is wind pollinated, there's a lot of genetic variation. And when the Europeans came to California, they found our walnuts, and then they added the East Coast black walnut, they added European walnuts, and same thing with the hazelnuts. They added the East Coast hazelnut, they added the European hazelnut, and so there's a lot of variation in that gene pool. California bay laurel is a very unusual tree. It is one of the few plants of its type, and it is ridiculously delicious. It is a pretty tall tree. It grows in the oak woodland plant community, but the leaves taste a lot like the European bay leaf. It's a little bit fruitier flavored when it's fresh. And I had a drink at a restaurant once where they combined orange juice and cranberry juice, and then they muddled a bay laurel leaf in there, and it was incredible. Super delicious leaves. Those nuts don't grow until the plant is pretty old. There is an incredibly old, large bay laurel tree in Palo Alto. It's one of the significant large trees in California. Grace is the one who told me about that. And so you may want to find an older tree to go collect the nuts, but you want to find an older tree to go collect those nuts because they are delicious. They're in the avocado family. And so what would normally be the avocado peel and the meat that you would eat they're edible, but they're super pungent. I mean, super pungent. It's the nut though, what would normally be the avocado seed that you want to collect. A lot of people go ahead and just peel those nuts out wherever you find them. This way the skins and the meat can go back and help the soil regenerate. The nuts you want to take home, leave them out for about 6 weeks because they're very oily and they need to outgas. And then you can roast them. And they taste like a combination of chocolate and coffee and hazelnut. And it is delicious. It needs its own food movement. It is one of my absolute favorite plants. So that's it for our perennials. I'm going to talk about container gardening with edible plants. Any questions before I start talking about containers? Okay. So
one question. You didn't mention Rosa californica. would assume that would have edible petals or?
Yeah, so Rosa californica, the rose hips are edible or medicinal. There's a few things I didn't mention. I didn't mention the Rosa californica because it's so very thorny. And I didn't mention the manzanitas because honestly, I don't think their fruit is delicious. And I didn't mention the oak tree acorns because it's so much work to get the tannins out of those acorns. And I didn't mention the edible native maple seeds. You can also take the tannin out of those. You could even make maple syrup if we were much, much colder. The native maple, the big leaf maple, Acer macrophyllum, is native all the way up to British Columbia, where they have a maple syrup festival, but we don't get cold enough. So even though I planted one of our native maples in my backyard because I was raised by cartoons, and every time I look at it, I have visions, little cartoon visions of pancakes, it does not get cold enough here. So I didn't mention any of those four. There's a word we're going to get to in a little bit called ethnobotany, which is the Google search term that you need to be able to figure out which plants are edible and medicinal. I promise to get to that. I will not forget it. I've got a chart for that. And it's the one that tells you when stuff is edible. I've tried a lot more stuff than I included here, just because I want to make sure something's delicious before I try it. Every once in a while, things like Oso where I either have to believe someone else or I'm just going with it because, hey, it's a fruit tree. But I did go ahead and leave Rosa californica off. So thanks for mentioning it. It is supposed to be edible, just haven't tried it. It's very thorny. It's supposed to be useful if you want to keep neighboring cats out of your garden. It's that thorny.
It's all in bloom right now, right? The Rosa californica, the bright pink ones.
Yes, they're bright pink.
Yeah.
I did just plant it in a Department of Public Works green space area. DPW doesn't officially care if we do guerrilla gardening in their spaces because they don't have the money to fix it. And I did just put one in there, so I haven't gone to see it yet. And we did it to manage some homeless issues in that particular park because it's. Did I mention how thorny? Extremely thorny. So let's talk about what works well in containers. You've got a north-facing pots on your balcony. What can you grow? You can grow annuals, you can grow bulbs and rhizomes, and you can grow succulents and shallow-rooted plants. So let's talk about edible annuals. Goldfields, back long ago, California was called, had mountains that were, and areas were called Doro by the Spanish, not because they had found gold, because they hadn't yet, but because it was covered with those bright yellow flowers. And it turns out those seeds are edible and delicious. I have not eaten them myself, but they are a long blooming annual that is supposed to be yummy. Chia sage is really fun. If you don't have space to put in a perennial space, go ahead and try the chia sage. There are 2 native chias. This is the one that grows from here all the way down to Southern California. And it's got that same sort of mucilaginous feel if you're putting it in a drink. Because it's in the mint family, the flowers are edible, the leaves are edible, and the seeds are edible. And it's got that spicy, pungent taste to the flowers. And it's got that brilliant blue flower. It is just gorgeous. Tidy Tips, another really pretty plant with edible seeds. Red Maids, I've tried to grow this and it wasn't giving me any love on clay, and I haven't tried it in my containers. I've got a friend who grows it down in Southern California. She grows it on sand and she says it's lightly invasive. So she pulls out clumps where she doesn't want it to be growing. So then you can use the leaves for a salad. Miner's lettuce, we talked about it earlier as a ground cover. You can also grow it in containers, and I do grow it in containers. It's really easy to grow. Oh, miner's lettuce, lots of shade. The rest of this wants some sun.
So these are all annuals or
all annuals.
All annuals. Okay.
Yeah, they are all annuals. So these are gorgeous. I happen to like pink. And Clarkia is just gorgeous. All of them are gorgeous. And they come in a variety of really friendly shades of pink. I have to admit, the seeds are not delicious. This is one of the few things I'm going to recommend to you. It isn't necessarily a delicious seed. It's kind of a meh tasting seed, but they're tiny. They're not quite as, with the manzanitas, those are bigger, meh tasting fruit. With this, you get a few seeds. They're not delicious. It's still a really pretty plant and it grows well in containers. And one of them, I believe it's the unguiculata, can take some shade. So that's the one with the three right-hand pictures. When you buy a package of unguiculata, you're going to get a lot of different colors. The rest of them are all pretty true to color, to whatever is on the package. Bulbs and rhizomes. One leaf onion, we talked about that earlier. Our onions are delicious. Ethereal Spear and Elegant Brodiea, those both have edible flowers and edible bulbs. So I grow it, the bees love it, I eat the flowers, I have yet to eat a bulb. I believe they have to be cooked. Blue Dix, I'm trying that this year for the first time. I was looking in my ethnobotany book, which confirmed what someone else had told me, which is that the bulbs are edible. Mariposa lily, I have to warn you, people get addicted to Mariposa lily, the way the flower looks, not, as far as I know, addicted to the bulb. But I was talking to one of the bulb experts who told me that, oh, by the way, that bulb is edible. I checked my ethnobotany book. Yay, verily, that bulb is edible. You have to know, it is so gorgeous. You may end up wanting to collect them all. So you have been warned. Anna,
So is that the one that's, I think it's going to be extinct, right? Mariposa lilies. There's some plant that is related to this one that's kind of on the extinction list.
So please be careful if, I'm encouraging people to garden with these, to buy ones that are not going to be extinct, and garden with them to help wildlife and to give you something to eat. When I am out in the wild with people or in parks, I have been known to feed people a little bit of say a sage flower or a little bit of a leaf, just to help them understand what our native plants can taste like. Because the Mariposa lily part that is edible is the bulb, it's really important to not be eating those in the wild. And in fact, don't eat any bulbs that you find in the wild, not because they're not edible, but because so many of our plants are having trouble in their native ranges. And so that's why it's important that we provide a market for people to go and encourage those bulbs to be grown.
But the hard thing is finding those bulbs to grow in the garden, because you can almost only buy seed, and the seed takes you 6 years, I believe.
Oh, you've grown it from seed. Great. I have not.
No, that's all you can find. I haven't done it yet because I've been trying to find the bulb for the last couple of years, but maybe I should just start it from seed, because I can't find the bulbs anywhere to buy. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm usually kind of terrible at growing things from seed. I must have bought it somewhere. Okay, this is the Calscape site. And so we're gonna look for Calicortus, and we'll look for the luteus. So that's the one we just saw. Oh gosh, okay. Point to you, oh, there it is. So the Calscape site will tell you which nurseries carry something. Yerba Buena Nursery carries it in Half Moon Bay. They are a really great nursery, and Linda Vista carries it in Saratoga. So and there's supposed to be a new linkage between Calscape and nursery so that they can keep their inventory up to date. I thought I saw, it may not have been this Calicortus, but Oaktown Nursery, which is the one that had the, in Berkeley. I thought I saw some Calicortus there. And they're the ones that have got that chain link fence covered with that Rogers red. So, but Anna, thank you. Good point. It's been a while since I bought my.
It could be just I've been looking at the wrong time of the year too.
Right. So
Because
I'm a
even with
terrible
Yerba
gardener. And
Buena, their inventory changes every 2 or 3 months. Like I say, I went a couple months ago, they had huckleberries and California hazelnut, and now I don't think they have California hazelnut, and I'm not sure about the huckleberries. So I just need to go shopping every so often.
Where do you get your plants?
Las Pilitas, used to be the California native plant sales, but those have been so rare lately and usually, but no, Las Pilitas Nursery or Yerba Buena Nursery. And
Yeah.
I have gone to the Oakland, and you just have to make a trip, but nowadays with restricted hours, we're fortunate we can get what we can get now.
Yes. Yeah. So I want to introduce you to the concept of a year-round buffet, because I like to keep my insects in my garden year-round. When we plant natives, we are already putting in a year-round caterpillar buffet, but we can look at an edible native plant buffet for people, which is the kind of plants we were just talking about. Edible native plants that are really great for bees, for adult butterflies, because adult butterflies aren't the specialists that the caterpillars are, and for hummingbirds. Hummingbirds are extreme generalists for nectar and for very, very tiny insects. So we just looked at all of these plants. I've got that sage, although it does not bloom in January, because the leaf is edible. That is the sort of thing that you can eat in January. And so this is the kind of edible buffet that you can have in your garden.
So the number next to the insect is the number of insects that depend on the plant, right?
Yes, the number of caterpillar species, specifically butterflies and moths, that depend on that plant, and often only that plant. So
and this is from the National Forest website. They had a.
So there's two different ways to get number of caterpillar species. Calscape has got it. They added that. No, that's not Calscape. Calscape added that information last summer, and it's been fantastic to look at. Okay, they're just showing one for the Mariposa lily, but if we look at something like, look at the thimbleberry. Housecape includes those different wildlife. The other thing you can see, yeah, it's fantastic, especially if there's a particular butterfly that you're looking for.
Yeah, this is the one that I go to, National
Wildlife Federation. So Doug Talamy is the one who figured out that, hey, different species support different numbers of plants. And this one will include not only the native plants and native caterpillars, but also the introduced ones.
Nice.
So you can find out, for instance, which ones are on strawberry. Yay!
Very nice.
Yeah, it's very helpful. And for anything outside of California, California's got it all the way down to the species level. For this National Wildlife Federation site, it's only including it, the fancy word is genera, so it's the word before species. So Fragaria for strawberry, not Fragaria vesca, or Salvia for sages, not, say, Salvia mellifera.
So woodland is the one that does well in full shade, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
it does well in full shade, and it does well in clay soil. Chiloensis needs a little bit more sun, and it does really well on sand.
Sandy soil, yeah.
It's so pretty in mass. So if you were, say, planting for bees, this might be the sort of thing you would do. So not only are you going to have the barberry and the currant and the sunflower and the cherry where people can eat some of this food, but you're going to include a bunch of other things where you wouldn't necessarily have people eat the food. So willow, the lupines, the coyote bush. One of the things that I recommend to people is that you have a year-round buffet, especially for bees, to have pollinators in your garden if you're growing food. This way you've always got bees nearby, and they'll go off and they'll pollinate whatever it is that you're growing. Often the generalist bees will pollinate your introduced fruit trees and plants in addition to your natives. We do have some specialist bees for morning glories and for sunflowers. So if you can plant our morning glory and our sunflower, that would be wonderful. The adult bee is a generalist feeder, but they have to collect sunflower pollen for their baby bee lunch boxes or morning glory pollen for the baby bee lunch boxes. It's a Calistigia is the morning glory. It is also quite sprawling, but very pretty. So things to consider. And it's nice to talk to people who are interested in edible plants because you have a higher probability of caring about bees than your average gardener. Also, adult butterflies become much more generalist when they are off looking for nectar. They're specialist, especially the mamas, when it comes to finding a leaf to lay their eggs, but they're generalist when it comes to drinking nectar. So if you're thinking, hey, I grow lantana, I see butterflies on it all the time, you're right, they do. They can drink nectar from all kinds of things, including introduced plants. The leaves are specifically for the babies. But if you want to have a more native or all native garden, we do have plants that bloom year round, starting with seaside daisy in January, and that thing blooms for months.
Yeah.
And the golden aster is wonderful in terms of blooming later in the year and blooming for months, and the sand aster as well. Sand aster, by the way, for all that it's called sand aster, will also grow on clay. Milkweed is a great late season plant. Please plant your local milkweed, and you can find your local milkweed on Cowscape. Please don't grow the one from the East Coast. It's not as good for our babies. So it's not quite as spectacular as the East Coast one, but more useful for the caterpillars. And hummingbirds. Hummingbirds are generalist feeders. They can get nectar from anywhere. They do like to eat tiny little insects, especially if they are laying eggs. They need that insect protein. We've got a bunch of plant lists on our Native Plant Society biodiversity resources link: edible plants, bees, butterflies, hummingbirds, long blooming shade, color plants, plant communities, sidewalks, and containers. So if you're looking for a plant list in and around San Francisco, we've got it. Cowscape is really useful, including finding nurseries. Calflora's got a wonderful bloom tool. Larner Seeds has got a really useful site on edible annual seeds. And this is the word you're looking for: ethnobotany. This is the search term, because if you use native plant or native food in Google, it won't give you anything useful. Ethnobotany will give you something useful. It's a $50 book. It's all black and white. There's no pictures. There's no maps, but it's brilliant.
Oh, wow.
Ptolemy is the one who found all that information on which plants support more caterpillars. iNaturalist is a wonderful way to find out what's growing near you. Not only the plants, but also helps you identify butterflies and bees. And I got all of these plants from someone else, the people who reviewed it. We have free lectures, free hikes. Jonathan Young is going to talk about coyotes this Thursday. You would sign up on our CNPS, the calendar of the speakers. And thank you for considering planting native plants. Questions?
Yes, questions.
Like the cartoon.
Yeah, I love the cartoon. I saw this on a Xerxes presentation and tracked it down.
Caroline had a question.
Sure.
Oh, sorry, I was just applauding.
Thanks.
Very nice. So I have a question. If you want to just quickly put together a plant palette of edible plants, which one is the best source to go to? Like, if you want to see which plants are flowering, from an ornamental standpoint, as a landscape architect, if you want to see which ones flower which month of the year, what's the best resource website?
So CalFlora is the best one. It's Cowscape will tell you spring, fall, summer, or something. CalFlora will actually tell you which months. So if you've got a birthday in May and you want to have something blooming in your favorite color for May, Calflora is a really good way to find it. I don't happen to like their plant lists, and it's not going to help you with what's edible.
Mhm.
But if you were looking for a specific plant bloom time, I use Calflora.
Okay, so but they're all native plants. They're not edible
All native plants.
Okay.
And
And for
Calscape is
edible?
all native plants.
Okay, and for edible, which one would be the best?
Edible, unfortunately, is still a combination of Larner seeds that is very good. Las Politas also has information on their site on which ones are edible. There's such a great, let's see, what they got that. Yeah, Las Politas has got an edible plant list. So also pretty useful.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah. But it's not going to help you with bloom period. It ends up being some combination of the ethnobotany book and a Las Politas site. There's also Tree of Life in Southern California.
Tree of Life?
Yeah, Tree of Life Nursery.
Oh, okay.
And they've got, it is unfortunately under something called Sage Advice. So that's not really obvious. Where did they put it?
Tree
Yeah.
of Life Nursery. Wow.
Yep, they have got, oh dear. Okay, it used to be called Sage Advice. Oh no, it is still called Sage Advice. Yep, there it is. Under Sage Advice on the Tree of Life Nursery. They've got a ton of useful plant lists. This is more for Southern California. So pollinators, summer.
Very nice.
We do have a native edibles.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah.
And do they have fruit trees? Because sometimes I've been asked for espaliered fruit trees. And I go to like, I think it's Devil's Mountain Nursery. They have a few trees there. But there's
Ooh, I
one.
don't know them.
Yeah. They do have a section of espaliered fruit trees.
Wow.
You've heard about they're in, I think, Santa Barbara or something, right? South of here.
Yeah, I don't know them. They do native plants?
Yeah, they do. I've seen Devil's Mountain Nursery, Petaluma. They have 3 different locations.
Yeah, this is new to me. Oh, they're wholesale.
Yeah,
Okay,
they
you
do.
can go. Yeah, you can go. I can't go.
They deal with contractors. They don't.
Yeah.
So.
And
So
this
how
is
did you get into native plants? Like, what was your interest? Was it because of low maintenance or?
I'm a terrible gardener.
Okay. Not a green thumb, not a green thumb. Like
not a green thumb. And I am descended from really good gardeners. And I had a garden in Los Angeles that was just a slope-filled thing of ice plants, and it was awful. And I wanted to do something else. And so I asked my mother, the master gardener, for help. And mom's a native Californian. So she's like, oh, you can grow all these things. And so we put in all these things. And of all the things, the only things that lived were the natives.
Oh, wow.
Lots and lots and lots of dead plants.
And when is your next talk and what is it going to be on so that everybody knows?
So I also do talks for the San Francisco Public Library. And I've given talks for them on edible plants, colorful plants, shade plants. And the next one is May 22nd, and it is on garden room elements. So it will be hedges and ground covers and erosion control and windscreens. And the one after that is in late June on children's gardens, one for San Mateo Arboretum on gardening for butterflies, August 1st. All of these are free, by the way. And then one for the San Francisco Public Library on drought tolerant plants. I believe it's August 22nd. And I think the library only opens up registration about 6 weeks before the presentation. So you go to SFPL, and you go to the events, and you go to the calendars.
Oh, SFPL events.
instance. And so that's the, for instance, and again, all of these are free. And all of the San Francisco Public Library events are also on their YouTube channel. Please understand and accept my apology. YouTube has started monetizing presentations even for those of us who aren't getting any money from it. It's their new terms of service as of last month.
Oh, really?
Yes, so they have added ads to both my edible native presentation for the library and on our YouTube site for California Native Plant Society Yerba Buena. I did a presentation and they have added an ad to it, which makes me not a happy person.
Mhm. So it gets interrupted.
But there's just that awful ad at the front. We're not making money from that.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Susan, thank you so much. This was really helpful. I've been considering putting in a gray water system in my yard.
Yes.
And I was wondering if you had recommendations for edibles that would do well. You mentioned some that you're growing in like a seep in your yard.
Yes.
What would be the top plants that would come to your mind that would, be more water tolerant? I have clay.
Ah, Joyce. Okay, so thank you for putting in gray water. That's wonderful. There's a wonderful book by a guy named Art Ludwig. If you haven't already found your yeah, this is a great book on water storage. It's my favorite because we have cisterns as well, in addition to seeps. We have so San Francisco in its infinite wisdom years ago, over 100 years ago, tried to make all of its creeks go away, even though water is life. And so they built on top of them. And that's what has happened to our backyard and our garage. It is built on top of a creek. So let's see, which plants are really good and could use some more water?
In clay soil, right? I also have a question about that. Like terribly clay soil. Like
Yes.
For gray water, their common recommendation is that the water goes to a mulch basin around the foot of your trees. I mean, but you need to be careful that you're not burying the root crown of the tree. So it should be a ring around where the tree roots are, but not right at the trunk.
because the roots need to stay completely dry.
No, but the root zone, root crown needs to not have anything. It needs to have air.
Okay.
So that's proper tree maintenance. But anyways, at the drip zone of the tree, you can have a kind of a berm and then mulch in there, and then pull the mulch away from the trunk itself. But in the mulch itself, you can put your gray water. And it depends. I find that there's a lot of different shades of gray water, because you could have water from washing vegetables, and that actually could go maybe even back on your leafy greens. But if you're doing like laundry to landscape, that should definitely be filtered through a mulch basin around your tree, and it shouldn't be fed into your vegetable beds.
Yeah, we're going to put in a laundry landscape system, and we were considering trees. But yeah, I was wondering if anything else that you knew of, Susan, would tolerate that environment.
Well, Grace, thank you for the recommendations. Hazelnuts are going to be great. Where are you based, Kelly?
Sunnyvale?
So hollyleaf cherry, blue elderberry, they can definitely take some extra water. Don't do a grapevine. No, did I mention the maintenance issue? Oh, monkey flower savory, because it's not lying on the ground, it's a couple feet tall. That's gonna love that extra water. All of these are gonna love that extra water, all of them. These can all do well with extra water, and none of them, get the barberry that's not the ground cover.
You know, I have to put in a plug for the grape, because if you really love grapes, the native Californian one is very prolific. And then all that, you have to trim the grapevine back before you get the grape harvest. And so there's a proper way to do that. But all those leaves can also be pickled, and you can make the domas out of it. So the grape leaves
wow.
themselves are also edible.
I have tried to cook with the grape leaves and have been somewhat less successful. I'm probably not a much better cook than I am a gardener. So.
The Greek food where the grape leaves are pickled, and there's a procedure you should follow for that. And then you wrap the rice, your cooked rice, and pine nuts inside the grape leaf. And
I think it's steamed, right? Or pressure cooked.
Just look it up and see what, the traditional method and what the modern method is.
You're right. It's a good point. Those are edible, and I have tried to cook with them. And Grace, thank you for recommending the grapevine. Mine haven't been producing in all the years I've had them, but it could be because I'm not trimming them properly.
Yeah, there's a procedure you should do to get them to produce well.
Okay, I'm clearly not doing that. So monkey flower savory, definitely add that. Any of these, all of these, try them all. They're all delicious and worth it.
And to buy, what's the best sauce to buy? Las Felitas?
Las Felitas is wonderful. Oaktown is great. Whoever's close to you. You're in Sunnyvale. Oh gosh.
Yeah, we have the CNPS plant sale store and Linda Vista as well.
Yeah, there's the one over in Half Moon Bay. It's a really great place in Half Moon Bay. Shoot, let's look for help there.
It's on Highway 92, right? I think.
Yes. Yeah, they're wonderful.
There's actually a place closer by. The Summer Winds in Palo Alto has a native plant specialist. Her name is Judith Schwartz. And they always have several bays of native plants, but she will also order you whatever you like.
Oh, Rana Creek is one of them.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yerba Buena Nursery is the one I'm trying to think of. Oh, yes, Susan. I got the Yerba Buena.
I had a question about the bay tree, the one that has the nuts.
Yes.
Is that a carrier of
sudden oak death? Yes, it is.
Sudden oak death?
It is. It is.
Because one of the arborists told me that never to plant that tree. And I was like, oh my God. I always thought it was a pretty nice, attractive, beautiful tree.
It's a wonderful tree. So camellias and azaleas are also spread sudden oak death, and I get a little cranky about the fact that no one stops people from planting camellias and azaleas.
Yeah.
But yeah, people don't want people to plant the California bay laurels. So if you have an edible garden,
Rufina, I think maybe one way to avoid that problem is if somebody doesn't already have oak trees, then they could probably put in the California bay laurel. And the other thing is maybe don't plant. So the sudden oak death pathogen is actually a water mold that's spread by rain. And so maybe don't plant the bay laurel tree on a slope above your oak area or your native plant area.
Oh, okay.
So, and then the other thing they've noticed is that, every year there's the Berkeley lab that has all of us citizen science people surveying the bay leaves for sudden oak death. We take samples and submit it to the lab. So they've made maps, and the lab has noted that in dry years, like we've had 2 dry winters. And so sometimes you see the pathogen seems to disappear in flat, dry areas.
Oh, okay. Okay, so as long as it's downhill from the oak and it's on flat, it's fine.
Well, you also want to space it. So the lab seems to have collected data, and they said if you're this many feet away, that seems to be better than if you're, I would say, if you have the further away, the better, right?
Yeah, the roots are not, close close to it. But in Saratoga, I
Well-
know the arborists are completely against it.
It's
so-
actually not
Oh.
transferred by the roots. The spores of the water moths sit on the bay laurel leaves.
Okay.
But of course, you never know when the neighbor is going to put in an oak tree, which would be wonderful. But the reason I wanted to pop in was just some up-to-date news about summer winds in Palo Alto. Judy is working there again. She was gone for quite a while during the pandemic. She's back on just Fridays and Sundays. And the native area is much smaller than it was. And she can't special order.
Oh,
So
wow.
hopefully that will all
Oh.
change back to the better in the coming year when she's back.
Yeah,
Now
I
that
try
she's
to-
back.
I try to drop by there regularly and always buy a plant just to keep like contributed to demand so that they keep that area. Because otherwise, if you look at the other summer winds, they're pretty poor in native plants. And so that's what it could be eventually if we don't, keep up the demand.
Right. Yeah, I try to do that too. I'm in Palo Alto.
Oh, that's nice. Are you Nancy Neff?
Yeah.
Okay, nice. Nice to meet you. I'm Grace.
Hi, Grace.
Well, I know that, Susan had a lot more for today, but it was very nice. And I hope, does anybody else have any questions? Oh, there's five of us. I can see everybody.
Thank you. That was very interesting.
Thank you so much for coming and considering native plants and native edible plants. And thank you all for the really good questions and the really good information, Nancy and Grace. That was really helpful to know about summer winds. I didn't know that.
Yeah. I found the last part very, the Q&A part very informative. So on Friday, we have a talk on lighting and night plants. And if you're interested, you can register online. And I'm looking forward to Friday's talk. And next week, we have East Bay Wilds on Tuesday. So that's another very interesting topic. Native plants for small spaces. So East Bay Wilds, he also does container gardens. I've spoken to him a couple of times, but I know that he's an expert. I'm pretty sure, Grace, you worked with Pete.
I haven't worked with him, but I've been to his place several times and I've spoken to him. He gives a famous talk around the whole area called the Fabulous Four. Have you ever heard that talk?
Yes, I went to the Mountain View Library, and he talks about these 4 native plants and all the different versions because he's a hiker. So
Yes.
that's one of the times when I was like, wow, this guy knows a lot about plants. I guess if you've grown up around California and you've been hiking, your observation of plants is totally different.
Yeah, it's kind of neat. The Fab Four, that's kind of like the bones of your native garden. It's a nice talk.
Yeah.
I'll track that down. Thanks. Yeah. So
So-
Caroline, you might want to call in for that Pete Villieu container talk because
Yeah.
Pete is the guy I get so much of my edible native information and plants from.
I just started a container with Brodiea in it, which I hope is going to make it.
Oh, that's exciting.
It's a very hardy bulb and definitely help yourself to a flower because it's a delicious, it tastes kind of like crunchy lettuce and it's gorgeous.
Yeah. I've even killed native plants, even though they say they're low maintenance. I'm like, I go and buy a whole bunch of plants and then I think I overwater them or do something wrong. And then
They're actually not easy, I think.
they're not easy.
A lot
Like-
of these plants that are traditional garden plants, they've really been bred for ease of planting, whereas the natives are a little more raw and they need specific conditions. And then California is this huge state, so they could have come from San Diego or some, riverbank. And so
Yeah.
they can't do well in everybody's garden.
Yeah. Even though they say they're like full sun, sometimes it's too much sun, too much, and now the weather gets too hot in the summer,
Actually, that's a big deal when they say full sun and it's coming from like Cedros Island or the coast. So that's different than full sun inland. So
Yeah.
the labeling is a little too simplistic sometimes.
Yeah. Well, it was very nice. I'm going to edit the recording that, I recorded from, I forgot to record from the beginning. So it's kind of like from the point where you start on the plants itself. So I will edit that and I'll put it up online. And I'm looking forward to seeing everybody at the next webinar on Friday. And so if nobody has questions, well,
Carolyn, if you want to get a hold of me and ask any questions, I'm on LinkedIn. It's the only social
Thank
media.
you so
I'm
much, Susan. Oh, me too. I'm not on any other social media too.
on. All
I
right.
appreciate that. Yeah, I'm putting in my garden well, I have been over the course of this whole year. We had a lawn that came with the house, and so I'm trying to put in these. So
yeah, and
I
I'll
really
try to get
appreciate it.
to the May 22nd talk, the one SFPL talk. That's virtual,
Yeah.
right?
It's all virtual.
Okay.
Everything. SFPL and I have been talking, and I will continue, even if some things are in person. I'll still do it on Zoom.
Oh, okay.
so that
Okay.
people can-
All right. Very
Thank
nice.
you, Rohina. Thank
Oh,
you,
you're
Susan.
welcome.
Thank you, Rahina.
Nice to see you, Grace.
I put everything on next door as well, so hopefully we'll get other people from different. 'Cause I think
Yes.
more people should be attending this series, so it's just
Yes,
a matter of getting
yes.
the word out.
Yeah, I noticed after you put it on CNPS, there were like 45 registrations overnight. So that was pretty good.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Right. Bye, everyone.
Okay, everyone.
Bye-bye.
See you later. Bye.